telling me to rotate my phone.
I'll rotate it.
Well, it keeps telling me.
I'm live. We're live. Okay, it says live. Are we live?
Yes.
Okay, so we are live. Sorry about that. We are mic'd up today, so hopefully you can hear me a little bit better.
I can't see you at all.
Okay, we're going to log off and log on. Why can't you see me? Is watching. Okay.
Okay, let's try.
Why can't you see me? I can see you. There's Deb. She's our videographer for today.
Great.
Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Little mechanical difficulty, but we're fine. That's why you know we're live. All right, here we go. We're going to talk today about borders. Not backgrounds, but just the borders on rugs. And you are here in W Cushing, the studios of W Cushing, and I'm Lisanne Miller. And we want to thank Rug Hooking Magazine for providing us the platform to do this. So this month's discussion is borders. And to me, borders are like hemlines. So when you're going to get ready to talk about a rug or talk about borders, you can date a rug really based on the border. Way back, and I don't have an example to show you because all of them were room-size rugs, we would do a room-size rug and we would just have what we would call a beauty line around the rug, okay? And then the background would be navy, it would be white, it would be black, we'd do a beauty line maybe of blue, and then continue with the background color. So for a long period of time, that was our borders, and we just used them, just use the background color as our border. And here's a really good example of that, okay? This is an early rug. This is hooked by Joan Moshimer, and as you can tell, here is her background. It is a blue. She just changed the value of the blue and finished it out. And there's no complication to the border. There's really no nod to the border. This was hooked probably in the 70s. This is a typical rug of the period. It's a solid background, a solid border in straight lines. And we're going to talk about a border in straight lines later on. But this is typical of the period of the 70s. Okay? And we got a lot of show and tell because I really feel like show and tell helps and gives everybody a visual of what I'm talking about. So here we go. This is another rug that was hooked probably, well, it was hooked in 75, right there. It was hooked by Joan in 75. This is Strawberry Basket. And as a half round, when you do half rounds, no matter what period, what time period, you have to finish the rug off. You have to tell the viewer we're stopping the strawberries. So we have a line that's right here that goes around, okay? And she fades it out so it's not a hard line really. And then she just continues the yellows out that were in her background. She doesn't change the color, she doesn't draw attention to the border, but she finishes it out so that you know the rug is finished. Also, we bound rugs back in 75 with the bias tape. So your binding didn't play into your border at all. So this is a typical, when you see a pattern like this, we're going to show you later on in the podcast how you can change this up, make it more interesting. But this is a typical way to finish it. Now, what do I mean by this contains everything in the picture, in the rug? Here's one without a border, okay? This is a pineapple without the border, and if you notice, it doesn't stop. There's no final border on it. It looks a little unfinished. It's not as complete. The pineapple is not as complete as this strawberry basket is. In this case, with a half round, and half rounds are really great rugs. I know people say, well, I don't use half rounds because I don't want the fireplace on it or this, but a half round works in a small bedroom, and you put it up against the bed and have it half round so it looks like it goes under the bed. Works perfectly. I use it in our guest room all the time. So, but this is an unfinished. Your eye doesn't finish it. The leaves are going out, but they're not contained, where this one is contained. So in half rounds, borders are important. They really, really are important. Okay. These are typical borders for the 70s. And it's interesting because I brought these two out so you could see them. They're both animals. But all that was ever done was the shape was echoed with different wools from the rug, or something that very much matched the rug. And then it was finished a little unevenly, which for its day was very avant-garde on this one, which adds to the wave. And this one was finished square. Okay? So here we have our background, our first border, second border, go back to the background, then a whole different color, another border, and the final border. On this one, the bias tape creates another border, much like if you whipped your rugs. So in this rug, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 borders on this small rug. But it looks like the cat is on a rug. Okay? And you can ask questions as we're going along. Please do.
Wow, we have someone on the line from Argentina.
Oh, hello from Argentina. This is a rug with an internal border. It's a small rug. It could be a pillow. It can be a wall hanging. But if you notice, here is your internal border. The border is built right into the rug. It's accented by this pink line. The pink line finishes it. The green acts as the border, and then there's just a little bit of white all the way around. You could have made this into a pillow. It's a wall hanging, different things, because really how you're going to finish your rug or use the piece does play into your border. But here we are right there. There's your border, and then the green is your final border out. Okay. Let's talk for a minute about an older pattern in updated colors. This is a Rebecca Andrews pattern, and it's an old pattern. And as you can tell, it's a floral runner, but all we have is straight lines because that's how they finished them. Straight line, straight line, straight line, which is fine. This is not finished yet. And how we finish it, how it's going to be finished, plays into the last border because it is going to actually be whipped with yarn in a green color. So it does add another border line to it. But this is an old pattern in bright colors, but as you can tell, the straight lines, okay, nod it to the old pattern. And again, she's going to have one more row, so this will have 1, 2, 3 border lines on it. And these are done in straight rows, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about chair seats. Chair seats that can be turned into pillows, but chair seats in general. People think that chair seats don't need a border. And I'm going to show you several chair seats without a border and then several with a border so you can see the difference. This chair seat here, this one here, and this one here. None of them have a border. And I know they're going to be in a chair and maybe that would play into it. But when you put a border on a chair seat, it does finish the rug in a proper way. This has the little border line around and then nods to the darkest value of the mulberry, of the wood rose in here. So just by adding these two little rows, we have finished it where maybe a little row of pink here or a little row of turquoise here would have finished the chair pad on that one.
So Deborah Smith has a question.
Yes.
How important is it to plan the border before you start hooking, or can you just wing it?
Well, Deb, you know me, I wing it, and that's sometimes a problem. It depends upon how much linen you have on the edges as well. I like to do my border at the end. I like to see the image, see what needs to be contained, what does the rug call for. And that is our progression in history. We're at that point now. But as we move along, you'll see how much borders have changed over the years. Mostly we hooked what was there, what was on the pattern. We never deviated from what was on the pattern. There's a certain period of time in rug hooking where borders were bigger than the rug, which we're going to talk about a little later on. Now this is another chair seat with a finished border. So if it were not to have this border, it looks okay, but this just adds to the finishing of it. It actually makes the chair seat, okay? So what are you going to use your piece for? Is it a rug? Is it a chair seat? Is it a pillow? Is it a wall hanging? What is the content of the rug? Sometimes that will dictate what you do. Our next phase is where we've done it where they were decorative arts, and this goes into the 80s. This is a Celtic, okay? And it will be a pillow. So if this was not on the Celtic, it would have never finished it. The darker row around needed to be done because it needed to contain the knots within. And normally with a Celtic, you really like to contain it. Now, the issue is, unless you're an excellent finisher, which I am not, you have to make sure that this stays straight all through the pillow. So that's something to think about. Or if you're just going to use it as a table mat, you can roll it and whip it or bind it with wool.
So Mary Allen's asking, would you use the colors from the piece or black to frame?
A heavy black frame, you have to make sure that that your rug is really, really going to stand up to it. You don't have to use the exact same wools in the rug, but you have to use the same tones and values that are in the rug. For example, here's the church. It has a whipped edge. It is a pictorial. It is a simple pictorial. And I really don't like to frame it on, but the whipped edge is very soft, it's very quiet, and it blends into the rug. If this was black, it would be awful and like putting a very, very hard frame on it. So that's the perfect example for that. Your border is a little different. And yes, you can border your stockings. I had that question sent to me prior to the podcast about stockings. Do you border them, do you not? Well, here is one without a border. It's a very simple, primitive stocking, and the back of it really creates a little bit of a border, as does the lining. If you are not really good at sewing, I would not put a border on it, because then you can see how uneven it is. So when you finish the stocking, if you finish it with wool similar, doesn't have to be identical, but similar to what's in the rug, it does create a natural edge, as you can tell. Now these have borders, but they're whipped borders, okay? They're white, they play back into the rug. It's not red, it's not black, but a soft white, and it is whipped. But as you can tell over the years that it has started to fray, if it had been done with the wool, it probably would have worn a little bit better. And here is another one that you can see is a little bit uneven, and it does show up as being uneven. So if you are making stockings, I would probably put a row around of what your primary color is. For this one, green. For this one, the blue. And then finish it with similar wool. Okay. Here we go with Wilhelmina. Now this is finish a rug, and one of the few pictorial rugs that wood that it hangs by. There is no border here. The linen that backdrop, that's the background. So there really isn't a need for a border, or she would stop flying on her broom. So in this case, a border would stop all your hard work, and you might only see the border. This is one of the cases in a wall hanging where you want this to come out to you, and it will come out to you, but a hard border will not work.
So when was it painted?
It was painted previously to hooking.
Okay.
With certain things, you can use our Cushing acid dyes to paint the linen. And we do paint the linen for Wilhelmina periodically. It does age over time. But if you paint the linen, you don't, number one, you do not hook on it because it does become stiff. But the motif itself, everything into here was not painted.
Okay.
And that was hooked normally. So you've created a backdrop almost as if you cut it out and put it on a painted wall. But if you had formed a very hard line around here, the movement of her cape, of her skirt, would have stopped. So Joan didn't want the movement to stop, so there's no border. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about pillows. If you're going to have a cording, which this is a cording around your pillow, just like this, you really don't need a border, because whatever the pillow is, okay, or whatever it is about, needs to be the focus. This happens to be a semi-weighted pillow, so the cording here acts as your border. And this was very popular in the 80s, to use the cording as a border. However, I'd like to give you a word of advice. If we're still using a heavy, thick cording into our rugs and then whipping, you are creating an edge, and you see this edge. So as you walk, if this was a rug, now not a pillow, we're talking about a rug, you keep hitting this with your foot. Keep hitting it. You keep bending it. This is where your rug is going to wear first, and this is where your linen is going to break. So try to make sure if you do use cording that it does not go above the rug. Okay, sit up. Well, he may not sit up. He may have to go down here for now. Okay. This is another pillow, okay, that is weighted, that does not have the cording. It just has the similar wool to what was hooked. So by doing this, doorstops were very popular in the 70s and the 80s, and they were finished in this way so that it could be a doorstop against the door. It does have a brick in it, as you can see. So this was a very popular way to finish your rug or to finish your doorstop without a border, because then it just accents too much instead of going against the door. This is a wall hanger, a bell pull, and if you notice, it's hooked. It's got a top border and a bottom border. That was built into the pattern. A bottom border is the holly, the top border is the holly as well. But when she finished it, it was finished with a fleece, and the fleece was rolled over instead of whipping to create an edge. It is a little bit of a harsh orange color. Probably a green or a red might have worked a little better, but it's probably what was used in the day. So this creates our border for the bell pull. Okay? Could you have hooked this? Most definitely, because you have such a neutral, and then just finished it with wool on the back. But this is a different type of an edge. It's a soft edge, and it can hang nicely and not hurt anything. So then we start to get into what we're going to call a little bit crazier of borders. And sometimes you've got to look at your pattern. And if you're drawing a pattern, you also have to take this into consideration. So here we are with our half round again. And this is not a linear border like the strawberries were, but now we have triangles all the way through, not even, notice, not even, but we have all the way We have this border, this border, this border. Then we have an internal border, which is part of the rug. So this rug came with one border, two borders, and an internal border. Now, that is why it's just simply finished with binding tape. Could you have taken this color and finished this out here? Yes, you could have, but it might have made it a little too harsh. So that's another reason the half round looks like that. Another one where they did take the color back out after the triangles is this. Similar thing, you have this. You have a bottom border of letters, which we're going to go over lettering and borders and the big mistake I made, and you'll all get to see it. And then we have this wavy border. Notice nothing is harsh. Then we have the triangular border filled in. But this time it was finished with a gold, a mustard line, and then a little bit more of a neutral. So this creates the bottom border, this creates the top border. Interestingly enough, this just doesn't have your look into. Here you are with little stones all the way around. These colors appear somewhat in here, but are not identical. This is where we start to see the borders not have much to do with the rug, but frame the rug to focus you back into the piece.
So Deborah Smith says, I find it interesting that each era has its own favorite styles of border. It's nice to see that rug hooking keeps on evolving and changing.
Yes, we do. It's like hemlines, Deb. They go up, they go down, and then they just cover our mistakes. But that's what we're doing now. So in here, now we're starting this phase of they don't really have anything to do, but they're not overpowering the rug.
Someone just said they love the cat. Cecilia.
Oh, good. Thank you. So here is from the late 80s. Here we go. And here's an odd border from the late 80s.
Looks like peacock feathers.
Yep, peacock feathers. And normally it would have been this line, okay, before this in the 70s it would have been this line, then this out here, this would have continued. Now we've got the peacock feathers, which nod back to the crewel with colors in the crewel, but really aren't part of the crewel. So just like this, where we have the little bricks, the little stones, this is another one where we're starting now to see that the border is really taking off from the rug. Another 80s piece to show you, which would really still work in today's. The border, while it has an Egyptian flair, really doesn't equate back to the rug. So now the border is really a focus and a frame. Okay? So now we have in this piece, this has framed it. And it's framed it quite heavily, but not overpowering. There's a difference between a heavy frame and not overpowering it. Another good piece to show you that is this. Okay? So here we have border, border, border. We have the external square border, typical of the 70s. Then we have this border. Then we have this creating a border. So this really is a mishmash of many, many different things that sometimes you almost miss the bird in the middle. Okay? They got busy with the borders. They still ended it typically. They weren't quite at the Jewel Marie Smith era yet, but they were getting there with this. Another good piece from that era is this. This is a half round. Okay? This is a half round. And look at all the holly. Look how thick the holly is. And I bet if we laid the holly out, it was bigger than the Santa. But she still didn't carry a different color out here. It still wasn't to the point of changing color. She did still stick with one of the blues in the background, but look how big the holly is. Okay. This is another one where the border changed, but it didn't change drastically. This bear has a lot of stuff going on in it, okay? The background is done in puzzle pieces, which we've talked about at other things. So now we have the triangle. So we have this border here, the triangle, then the nod back into here. But this color is not really in here. It's similar to this, but not this. So yes, the background is still taken out, and this is going to be whipped in a light, almost a periwinkle, so it'll frame it lightly. So while everything is going on in here, the borders, while they're extending it, they've quieted it down. Okay. Let's talk about lettering in our borders. Let's talk about this. This rug is one that I've hooked, and it says sold to the moose in the first row and a year. Okay? The good lesson on this is don't put a lot of lettering in your border. Okay? Why do you not put a lot of lettering in your border? Because when somebody approaches this rug, they read around the entire border, they laugh about it being sold to a moose, and then they leave. They miss what's in here. So you have to watch when you put lettering that you know that the lettering is going to draw their attention outside, okay? And that if it is, you better make the inside pretty interesting so they don't miss it, okay? Lettering should not overpower. Now that doesn't mean you can't put something at the top like the Miller house and the year it was established, that's okay. But if they're going to read around this rug, make sure that you know they may miss what was in the rug. That was my lesson. Some borders have nothing to do with the rug. Okay? So these stars is just a simple rooster. Here you have the stars coming greatly into the rug. You have the triangles, you have the half rounds, and then you have the rooster. And some of the colors equate, some don't. And this is a nod to the error that we have in 2010. This was on the front of Rug Hooking Magazine. Jewel Marie Smith, here's our little moose. And Rug Hooking knew it was ahead of its time. And here's a border, here's a border. Boy, the border is bigger than the rug. The border had nothing to do with the of the rug. Okay? They're uneven. They're not these straight lines. They play in and out. They have checkerboards. They have everything. They have nothing to do with the moose in the center per se, but man, they're interesting. Well, Jewel Marie Smith. So for 3 years, we all created. Here we go. I did that in 04, but this was 2010. And so that's what we did. And Jewel did it very well. As you can tell, look at the border. It's uneven. It comes in and out. She's juggling J's for the joke. This one. Here we have the house. All odd shapes. Unevenly coming into the rug, breaking the favorites, bird in hand. Look at all the hands coming in. That's her border with hearts. The hands are every which way but loose. So this allowed us the freedom of no matter what was drawn on the rug, we could do whatever we could design a border that was extravagant, that was wide, that was thin, that wasn't straight lines. And that worked really well. So in that vein, here is an older rug that was just hooked in new fashion. And is it going to have a border? Is it not going to have a border? How's it going to be bound? This has a lot going on in it. So you're going to have to wait and see. The hooker, which is not me, hasn't decided yet. But we're leaning towards just a solid line of dark and then binding it with wool because it's going in a hallway so that the twist doesn't stop. But it was brought up, and we brought it up, that we would use flat black, something we haven't used in years, just flat black to make a hard line to contain it in. And then it could be one of these other colors. We can shock everybody and use one of the other colors that are in this, just use that. But it can't be a multiple of colors. Here's a border that isn't a border. And I'm stepping on the mic, hold on. There we go. Okay, so here we are. Here's the trees. The treetops are the border and the grass is the border down below. Uneven, but it finishes the piece. So in this case, there wasn't a need for a border. It was the treetops were the avant-garde border for this piece. And I felt that that was what was needed. Now, what also plays into whether it's an old rug or a new rug, and this happens to be an older rug, but the person who hooked it might have run out of wool, we're not sure. And I'm going to flip it on the other side so you can see it. This has an internal border in all different colors. The shapes are mimicked shapes, but the border is actually bigger than the roses. So most of us, Jewel Marie Smith taught us to break our borders. So, in this rug, which I did in Jewel's class, I broke my border. I made the border a parade. So, with the parade, I broke the stars unevenly. They don't all come in. I stopped the gray line where the stars came in. I have confetti, as much confetti as I could fit in here. And the border, while it equates back to the rug, it breaks it continuously. And that's a beautiful part. A lot of times breaking your border and not making it solid lets you really, really add interest to your rug. Now, the other thing that can be done in how you break your border, we're going to go step back to the wall. Here is a hunt scene done in the old style. I think we're okay. Here is a hunt scene done in the old style. You have your square. The hat broke the border a little bit, but it looks like he's got a problem with his hooves around here. There's a bunch of different things that could go wrong. So this was the original hook, straight, 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 straight. So I decided to come in and break the border with the hooves, break the border with the mane, and break the border with the hat, break the border with the sky. I also hooked the rug, the borders not in straight lines, and I added corner pieces. So I did frame the rug. This is one piece of wool, which we'll talk about in a second, but I didn't hook it in straight lines. And I did put corners in, and here's the old way of doing the borders, and here's how you break the borders.
So apparently they're having some video issues where it's freezing the frame.
Okay.
But we're still filming here. Everything's still coming along. So Rug Hooking Magazine said, "Hello, we apologize if you're seeing any video issues. The video should resume after a moment. If you're not seeing that, then we suggest refreshing the page and you should see it again."
Okay, sorry about that. We don't know why it's freezing because we're still going live with us. So just refresh your page. Sorry, we can't. That's something I don't know why it does that. So we're going to talk about why we don't hook in straight lines in a border and why it's not good for your rug, okay? Here is a border. Here's rugs done in a straight line, okay? Now, when you do it in a straight line, see this? You can see right back to the rug. This one's a little bit better. You can go right to the linen. You see that, right to the linen? So a very simple way to do this is like this. If this is your border, and this is the space for your border, you can do this just like this, okay? And then you're going to hook this so it's a straight line. You're going to hook this because it's your outer edge in a straight line. Then you're going to hook this just like that, and you're going to fill it in with your wool. Fill it in with your wool. Fill it in with your wool. You can also do it, if you so choose, which is what I did on the hunt scene, like this. I hook this first. I hook this. Then I hook your lines, just like that. Okay? And then you fill in. Now what you do, and this is the greatest thing of all, is the border goes quicker. For those of you that pack, and you know who you are, you won't pack your border, but you add interest, but you also don't have straight lines. So I did the diamond one, or the triangular one, up on the hunt scene. And while it's subliminal, it's not really definitive, it's still there. Okay? And it doesn't go back to the linen, and it helps you with your rug quite a bit. But straight lines, this is what happens. Okay. And here's another good straight lined one. And you can see it. It was done on monks, so you can see it a little bit clearer. And you can actually see, because it's been on the floor, where some things have gotten in there, even though it's been vacuumed. So it does not help. Now, how are you going to finish your rug? Are you a braider? Are you going to braid? That all comes into play. So, here is a typical chair seat. It has a little bit of a border on it to finish the motion. But maybe you don't want it as a chair seat. You'd like it in the middle of the table. Well, here's a smaller braid. It's not very heavy. It's done in similar colors. And there you go. Okay? So here you are, and the braids equate back into the eggplant and the radishes, but they don't overpower it. And now you have a nice table mat. But here's the key, and I'm going to flip this over. Make sure that this is finished first. The border was going to be braided.
Dragon.
I didn't think we have a heron, not a dragon. Might have looked like a dragon upside down. Is this what the one you want?
I don't know.
This is the heron. Straight to the back.
Okay.
Okay? But I don't have a dragon, sorry. A moose, heron, birds. Now, this is an interesting piece. And this was done to break borders. Here's one shade of the background. Here's a different value of the background. The scrolls created the border. And then it should have had another border here, but instead a very heavy braid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flowers were added. So in this case, the border is bigger and the finish is bigger than the rug. Had another line been added here, it would have been too much, way too much. So here we have an internal border and a large external border. We're really breaking the borders on this one. This is one of the few rugs that is there's no border line, but it was finished with a solid braid and ended with a solid braid and mixed in the center. Yes?
They're asking about seeing the diagram again.
Oh, the diagram. Sure. Here's the diagram. Okay. So with the diagram, you would hook, and I'll draw it again down here. You hook your bottom line. You hook your top line. This would be the end of your rug. This would be what comes up to your hooking of your rug. And then you just draw this. Now, do not worry about drawing it evenly because you won't see it. Because you're going to hook it with your border material. Okay? And then you're just going to fill it in, and fill it in, and fill it in, and fill it in. And it works wonderfully. And you can say to yourself, you know, you get tired at the end of the evening, I'm going to hook 6 of these, and you end up doing 8 to 12, and your border goes a lot quicker. Another way to look at that is this. Okay. If you look in here, I hooked this row, I hooked this row. They're not all the same wools at all. Okay, they're different textures that were in the rug used. You can barely see the diamonds, but they're there. And then you have a line and a line to contain it. And then, of course, I bound with wool, so I create a little border. And this is it put into good use, just like this. Okay? And here it is, and I just went all the way around with it. And sometimes I would use different textures or different plaids. They're not all the same plaid, but they're all the same value. It's a good way to use up your scrap. But you see, then there's the outside row, and then I added with my binding. Now, if you're going to frame your piece, okay, this piece is hooked, it's simply framed, it's hooked on the wool, so there's no background being hooked. Make sure your frame doesn't overpower your piece. You don't need an 8-inch frame for a small piece. We don't need that.
So Karen says, would you suggest that method for hooking a wooden type border on a pictorial rug, or go with the straight hooking?
We're going to talk about pictorials in 2 seconds, because I have a whole view about pictorials that I really don't like borders on my pictorials, and we're going to go to the back board for that. But I don't like a heavy border around my pictorials, even if it's a primitive pictorial, but we're going to get there in a sec. Let me finish with framing, and then we'll go to pictorials. Here is a hooked piece with a simple frame, and the simple frame equates back to the small piece. So, hint, if you're going to frame as your border, if you're just going to finish this as is and you're going to use a wooden frame or a purchased frame as the border, make sure it equates with everything else. Make sure that the frame as the border doesn't overpower the piece unless that's what you're looking for. Okay. We're going to jump for a second and we're going to go to pictorials. I do not believe for a minute that you should put your pictorials in a frame. Now, you can do a beauty line around if you have to, okay? And I'm okay with that, but I don't hardcore frame my pictorials. The reason is I want to invite you in. This is the Nubble Lighthouse. I want to invite you into the Nubble. I want you to feel what time of year it is. The same thing with these. They have very little around them. I don't want to detract from what's in them. I have seen too many people who have spent a lot of time hooking their homes beautifully, hooking places that are important to them. And then they frame it so much that you miss what the piece is about. It's kind of like putting lettering around. If I were going to put a border around, it's always just a simple line that disappears. It would be a simple line in a smaller cut, in a value that disappears with the sky. But I really want you to come into the piece. I don't want you to stop. I want you to come right in. I want you to feel like you can open that gate and walk up to that porch. I want you to climb those rocks and go see the lighthouse and not get arrested by the York police in the process. But that's what I want you to do. I want you to come into it. Okay? Here is a pictorial, what I consider that was framed. This is an older piece. And you can tell it needed to be framed because of the tail and also because she stuffed the piece to come out to you. The person who hooked this knew the frame was a little bit too much. So this is stuffed and this is coming out to you, so it creates a dimension. Okay? I don't know if I would have used a gold frame. I kind of think it takes away from the piece. It dates the piece. I would have preferred just a simple line around the pictorial if you were going to do that.
So Nancy, yes, this video will be available later.
Okay. Yes, it will be. Yes, the video will be available later for you to review again or to look at again. You just go to Rug Hooking Magazine's Facebook page and you will look under videos and it will be available there. Yes. Are we still having freezing problems?
I think it's when it says low network connection.
Okay. Well, okay.
It says connection not available, but we're still filming, so.
Are people still on?
People
Okay.
still on.
Okay. I don't know why the connection wouldn't be available, but we'll see what happens. Now, here's another way to finish a piece to make it freestanding. This is a border. Okay? Here's the border. Okay? That's your border. If I had put a line around Santa, we would have lost Santa. Okay? So it's a freestanding piece, little bit of green, that's my border, nothing else. This is an unusual way to frame a piece, but it was how I'm going to use the border on this. I into a wreath. So if I had bordered it, it would have controlled it too much. The wreath becomes the border. Again, okay? Here's one piece that I haven't decided, and everybody who's on the podcast can decide. I've hooked this a long time ago, and I've never decided how we're going to border it. If I'm going to do it as individual pieces, or all as one piece, or paint the linen, or hook in between. So, I've never decided, it's never been finished, but there are some pieces that are very, very hard to pick a border for. Could I frame it as it is? Sure I could. But none of the pieces except for these two have hardline borders. All the others meld into the linen. So this is one piece that we're not sure about. So you can decide.
So Deborah Smith says, I still see there are difficulties. It may be weather related, at least on the East Coast, rain and storms.
Yes, it could be that. But it will be available again, and we apologize for that. We're going to walk back down. Now the rug will decide what to do. You can change your border. You can have your border have nothing to do with your rug. You could have a pictorial geometric, in the middle, the moose with a geometric border. You can do all sorts of things, but you have to take into consideration, what do you want to focus on? What is important about the rug? How are you going to bind the rug? How are you going to use the rug? They are the main things that you will need in order to do that. The other thing that's very, very important with the borders is what is good for your lifestyle now. That is the other problem. What is good for your lifestyle? Do you want rugs on the floor? Do you put rugs on the bed? Do you hang rugs on the wall? So one other option is, if you're hanging your rugs on the wall because you've run out of floor space and they're rolled up in a closet, is you can put them onto a frame. This is a small piece, and that's what I was talking about with the trees. This is a small piece, and I've sewn on my wool binding, and I've attached it to a frame. So I can put it in an easel, I can hang it on a wall, but I haven't stopped the process. It still looks like a piece of art.
And that was a canvas, right?
Yes, this is a canvas, and we'll zoom in on this again for you. It is a canvas, and I'm going to tell you about the canvas. This is a regular canvas that you can paint on. It's wooden, okay, and this is the canvas itself. You can buy them at any Hobby Lobby or Michael's, okay, but don't buy the most expensive one. We're not painting on this. Buy the least expensive because you're going to be going over it. You just need this and this to have the stability for your piece. So this way you can, and you would back it with a piece of wool. I haven't backed it so I can show everybody what it is. Okay? And then You can put it in a frame. You can hang it on a wall. You would have to stitch it, and one of our future podcasts will go over this process completely, so stay tuned for that. We're going to do a piece from start to finish on this, and the larger pieces you do have to tack onto the canvas. But again, this is still another way now. This is my border. I have, we're going to go back to the beginning. No, I'm not going to repeat everything again, don't worry. And we're going to sit and go over how to hook with the different hooks. 4 or 5 of you have emailed me and asked me, and then today we got a few phone calls. So here we go on how to use the hooks.
So Mary Allen's asking, do you sew the backing or do you glue it?
No glue. You know better, Mary.
Staple.
And no, yeah, you staple it to the back, but we don't glue. No glue. Why don't we glue? Glue is not good for the fiber. But when we go to use the framing method, I will show you how we stitch it on. And that is a future podcast for later in the year, so stay tuned. Okay, people have asked me first, this is the ball hook, okay? The whole purpose of the ball hook is to fit into the palm of your hand. It is usually, we have a shorty and a long. Right now the shorties are out of stock. But this is how we do it. You see this tapered, and people always ask, why is this tapered? Well, if you only need a small hole, you go to here. If you need a larger hole, you go a little bit further, and you pull it up. So the motion with this is this, and that's how you hold it. You use the ball in your hand, and you push, okay? So I'm pushing it in, pulling it up, pushing it in, pulling it up, pushing it in, pulling it up. That's how the ball works. It's like this. So if you have arthritis, if you move your wrist a lot, if you can't move your wrist a lot, this is how you can hold it. Also, if you have carpal tunnel or a little bit of tingling in your hands, or they're a little numb, this lets you feel what you're doing and allows you to hook. In the same manner, it's still in and out, okay? But it allows you to feel the hook. Also good for prodding. The next one that they asked was the shorty. This is our 8mm Ergo shorty. We can get it out of the linen. There we go. So you're going to put your thumb here. You're going to hold it like this. It is a shorty compared to this. See the difference? It is a shorty. Okay? So with this prevents the fishing. Okay? So when you go in, you're going to pull in, pull up. And you don't have to pull in as much. And there we go. This is live. There we go. Let me get a cleaner piece here. So with the shorty, you're not going all the way in. It allows you not to fish as much. Okay? So you're going to go in. You're going to push it in. And the shorty works especially if you're going to use hand-torn or larger cuts. It opens that hole really wide and pulls it up. So this is the shorty, but you don't have as far in to go as you would with a traditional hook. Now here we go back to the bent hook. This was a lot of questions on the bent hook. The bent hook is also graduated. It's graduated from a small to a medium to a large cut. Now with this, if you're doing a smaller cut, this is a 6, I believe. So you're doing this just like that. Now if I was doing a wider cut, I would go further in and further in and further in. So I'm not really moving and I'm just pulling it up. I'm not doing this. This is good if you've had shoulder, if you have neck issues. This will allow you to do that a little bit easier. So you're not doing this. This does take a little bit of time to get used to. Several of you have emailed me about that. And yes, it does take it because you're doing it in a completely different way. Your hook is going in here and in here. You're just doing this motion. There's none of this. Because the minute you turn, you lock it onto your linen. So this is the motion, because you're trying to take the pressure off of this, off of your elbow, off of your shoulder. Next is the pencil. Okay, this is the 8mm pencil, so you need to grip it. It does not have the little indents here because this allows you to grip it. And if you're not used to using a pencil but you like the lighter weight, then you just pull it in and pull it out. Again, this is the motion. You hold it like a pencil. Yes, you can over grip it. If you have carpal tunnel, if you have elbow, tailor's elbow, tennis elbow, then this would not be the hook for you. This, you're going to over grip it. You're going to hold it. See how tight I'm holding it? You're still pushing it in and out. It's rubbing on here. Then you would go to this. You would go to a bent hook. Now, somebody else asked about the smaller cuts, the 3s and the 4s, and the 2s and the 3s. Here is a 3 cut, and here is the hook for the 3 cut. So this is an ergo hook, and it will just allow you to pull it in and out as long as you keep your thumb where the ergo should go and you cradle it. And that will let you do that without shredding your 3 cut because you're putting it on. Okay? Now, if that's not working for you, then you would use your bent. If you're the type that is having the elbow, having the shoulder issues, this is the one for the smaller cut, and you're going to dip it in and pull it up. Dip it in, pull it up. Dip it in, pull it up. And you see I'm not really moving too much of my hand even, and that's how you would do it. Now, when you do it that way, you are opening up, this is opening up a hole for a 4 and you're hooking with a 3. So of course this is sliding so much easier. Okay? And that's what you want to do because you don't want to shred the wool on the 3 cut. So whichever one hooks better for you would be the one you would use so you don't shred it, and then what happens with the 3 cut is it will break apart, and that's not what you want. So one of these would work. They'll open up a bigger hole, and you won't be shredding your wool. And that's what you really want. You don't want to shred it no matter if it's a 3 cut or an 8 cut. So by punching the bigger hole, you're not fighting it, and you can see how quick this goes in and out. Okay? So that is the hooks. I hope that answered all the questions, especially with the ball and with the shorty. You can use the shorty as well to proddy if you would like. You can use it for hand torn if you would like. So that's about it. I don't think that there is anything else.
Oh, is there a pencil for a 3 cut?
There is a pencil. The only pencil that we have right now, we're working on a pencil for a 3 cut. That is a Hartman. There is a Miller pencil for a 3 cut. We are working on a Hartman for a 3 cut. We have a 4mm pencil, which will work for a 3 cut, but it does punch a big hole. It's about this size. It's a little bit bigger. And that pencil is very light. And the other thing that I didn't answer that somebody had asked, I apologize, is why this over this, or which vice versa. This is heavier in your hand. It's a heavier handle. This is a very light handle, and it is well balanced so you don't over grip it. So if you have issues where you don't need to feel the weight, or too much weight hurts your fingers, or you have trigger finger, then a lighter weight would work better for you.
So everyone's saying excellent. Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Have a good day. Have a great month of June. We'll see you sometime the end of the month. And enjoy the sunshine. Those that are in the bad weather and in Hurricane Alley, we hope you're all doing very well and that every one of you is safe. Have a great day now. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.